Hi everybody and welcome back to Crumbs and Doilies and welcome to the Cupcake Jemma channel, especially if you are new here, welcome. I know a lot of people have been taking up baking whilst they're in lockdown during these crazy corona times, which is great. So we've been taking you back to basics with some really simple recipes like fridge cakes. We did the lamingtons last week as well. So now we're going to go back, way back, and we are going to make some scones or scones. This is a huge debate. I say scone, but I think it's probably scone because I think that's probably what the Queen says. And these are a really traditional English tea cake, and you have them with some jam and some clotted cream, and we'll get to that at the end. And this is a really great thing to learn, especially if you want to get your kids into baking, because it's really fun. We're going to do it all in one bowl. We're going to do it by hand. We don't need any machines. They're just going to take half an hour in the oven and they are absolutely delicious. So we're going to start with some dry ingredients, and we've got 425 grams of plain flour, and that's going to go into a nice large bowl. And then we're going to add 5 teaspoons of baking powder because we want to give these a good lift, along with a nice pinch of salt. So it's not like loads of salt, but salt's really important in baking as well as cooking because it brings out all your flavors. And then we're also going to add 50 grams of sugar just to add a tiny bit of sweetness. So now it's going to grab a big wooden spoon and gently mix those together before we add our butter. So butter needs to be cold. It needs to be taken straight from the fridge. I've got unsalted butter, but if you've only got salted, that's completely fine. We've got 125 grams and I've cut it into these tiny little pieces. And we're going to add those into our bowl, and now we're going to mix these with our hands with a technique called rubbing, and we are simply going to rub the butter and the flour mixture between our fingers like this. So it can feel, I mean, it is actually going to take a little bit of time, but just be patient. If you do have a food processor and you want to do it in the food processor, then that's completely fine. Just pulse it until it forms a fine breadcrumb. But I really like doing it by hand because I just find it so satisfying to make something completely with my own hands. And also you get kind of slightly irregular sized chunks of butter, and that really adds to the kind of flakiness of our scones. So I would suggest doing it by hand, and your kids will love it as well. So just keep going, gently picking it up and rubbing it between your fingers and your thumb. So as you can see, it's like a very fine breadcrumb, but there's a few little chunks of butter in here as well. So I am going to stop there, and now we need to bind it all together, and we're going to do that with some milk and 1 egg. So I've got 250 mils of whole milk here. If you're feeling super lavish, you could go half cream and half milk. But I've only got milk, so that's going to be fine, and I'm going to add to it 1 whole egg. And then we're going to whisk that together quickly, so either with a fork or a whisk. And then we're going to add it to our dry ingredients. So what we need to do is make a well in the middle of our bowl of flour. And into that we're going to pour all of our wet ingredients. Now, if you're feeling brave, you can just go straight in with your hands, but you are going to get messy, and that's completely fine. But I'm going to start off with a fork. So I'm very gently going to pull in some of that inside flour into the milk, and then I'm going to get my hands in. So all we are doing with our hands is just very gently bringing this dough together. We're not kneading it. We don't want to overmix it because we want it to be nice and buttery and flaky. And it is incredibly messy, but it's kind of fun as well. And once it's kind of come together, we're going to tip it out onto our surface. So if your dough feels particularly sticky, just get an extra bit of flour, dust it over the top, and just again gently bind it together with your hands. And when you're kind of happy, it needs to look like this. So you can see it's nice and kind of squishy, but it's not sticking to my fingers anymore. So now we can roll it out. And if you have a rolling pin, fantastic. If you don't, you can actually just do this with your hand, just by pushing it out gently like this. And we want to go for about 1 inch thickness. So if you ever find that your rolling pin or your dough is sticking to the surface, just add a little bit more flour and that's just going to make sure that it doesn't stick. And when you've got to about 1 inch thick or whatever thickness you're doing, it's time to cut them out. If you've got a cookie cutter, fantastic. I like to use these like fluted ones here, but if not, you could use a glass. So what you'll do is put a little bit of flour on your surface and then just dip this cutter or the glass or whatever you're using into that and then start chomping out your dough. So when you've cut as many as you can out of that kind of roll, you can very gently bring your dough back together. You don't want to overwork it again, but don't worry, these are all going to taste wonderful. So gently roll that out again. And these ones might be a little bit more rustic looking, but they're rustic looking kind of things, so don't fret, guys. So when you've cut all of yours out, if you've got some little leftover bits, obviously feel free to smush them together and bake those as well. Now they're ready for the oven, but what I like to do and what I think you should all do is give them a quick egg wash. So this is going to make sure the tops are nice and kind of golden and shiny as well. So if you had a bit of milk and egg left over from earlier, then you can just use that. If not, and you've got a spare egg, beat that up, or even just milk is going to do perfectly for this. So I've got a pastry brush here and I'm just going to dip it into my egg wash and very lightly paint the top of each scone. And also, if you don't have a pastry brush, don't fear, you can just use the tips of your fingers. So just dip your fingers in and very gently paint the top of each scone with the egg wash. And once all your scones have had their little egg wash, they can go in the oven. So I've preheated my oven to 170 degrees C. It's always important to preheat your oven so that whenever you put your cake or whatever you're putting in it, the oven's all nice and warm in there. So they're going to go in for about 25 to 30 minutes. And what we're looking for is a nice golden top. And if you think they look great, just pick one up very gently because they're hot. Just check that the underneath is also nice and kind of solid as well. I'll show you what they're supposed to look like when mine are ready. So let's go and put them in the oven. Okay, so 25 minutes is up and you can see the tops of the scones are really lovely and golden, and if you pick them up and look underneath, the bottom is also golden as well. So they look perfect. So I'm just going to take those out and we're going to leave them to cool down probably for at least half an hour, and then we can come back and eat them. Look how beautiful our scones are. They are so lovely and golden on top, and that all comes from the egg wash. And then when we cut them open, they look perfect. They're all really lovely and even, and they're nice and soft. So it's time to eat one, but here in the UK, there's a bit of a debate, okay? So traditionally, you eat these with some clotted cream and some jam, but which way do you put them on the scone or the scone? So many debates. So I'm going to put this to the test and I'm going to finally clear it up, and I'm going to try one with cream and jam and one with jam and cream. So here goes. I mean, it's delicious, but we better try the other way. I'm going to go with number 2. This is my winner. I'll just have another bit just to make sure. So good. But you don't have to eat them like this. You can spread some butter on them. You could put some cheese in them. You could do whatever you want with them. They are absolutely wonderful. They're really easy. They're really quick, they're really fun to make. So please have a go, let me know how you get on. Tag me on Instagram @SallyDalls as well as Cupcake Jemma, and use the hashtag #CupcakeJemma so we can all see and share your photos. And make sure you've subscribed to the channel and click on the little bell next to subscribe, because that way you'll get notifications every time we upload, because you do not want to miss out on Tuesday's video. We've got a special video with not one but two really wonderful special guests. So make sure you tune in on Tuesday. In the meantime, get baking, head over to CupcakeJemma.com to check out our merch and all our baking kits as well, and we will see you on Tuesday with a very exciting recipe. Mm.